Hello, hello. It's Regiment of Renown time once again, and this time we're tackling Slannesh. That's right, baby. Patch 2.2 has finally come and gone, and that means we can finally start tackling the factions that I am the most familiar with. So, let's get right into it. As per usual, this information will primarily pertain to domination, though it can help you in land battles or campaign as well. So let's get started. First of all, we have the Mirror Guard. So, in addition to having level 9 stats, they also get magical attacks, as well as this ability called Supreme Vanity, which gives plus 10 melee defense to units in 35 meter radius if that unit is a lord or a hero. So on the Warriors of Chaos roster, these guys are incredible. You know, they're ITP, they're Fizz resist, they have magical attacks. On the Slannesh roster, that doesn't stand out quite as much. So with these guys, the only time you really make use of this ability is when you're pairing them with like a Sigvald type character or a caster on a War Shrine, which can both be quite nice. That can be quite nice pairing in those situations. But outside of those, you're really just paying for rank 9 stats. You have plenty of magical attacks on this roster. Your entire roster is ITP, so that's not unique on this roster. So really you're just paying for rank 9 stats, which before they got nerfed, when they were only 950, they were pretty much a must-take just for the rank 9 stats. Now they've been nerfed to cost an additional 50, so up to 1,000 gold cost. It's a little more questionable whether those rank 9 stats are worth it, especially with so many spells in the game that are likely to just one-shot them anyway, so. Sometimes they're nice. On the Warriors of Chaos, they're a lot better. On Slannesh's roster, I don't know if they're necessary. Next, we've got the Bringers of Beguilement, the ROR Exalted Demonettes of Slannesh. So, these guys have Perfect Vigor, as well as a Rampage Contact effect, Euphoric. That said, they do actually lose out on the Charmed Contact effect of the basic Exalted Demonettes. And honestly, the Charmed Contact effect is one of the biggest draws of Exalted Demonettes in the first place. So that's a pretty big loss, I think. The Rampage Contact effect is somewhat nice, but as Slannesh, you already have the army ability that rampages, as well as the army ability with a net, and a spell that causes rampage as well. So you have ample sources of rampage. So I think this unit is actually just a downgrade over the regular one. Especially for 1,550 gold, I believe. Having so much money in such a squishy, lightly armed unit, yeah, they're a lawnmower and melee against other infantry. But Slannesh doesn't lack for that anyway. And I mean, honestly, regular demonettes do much better against that in that role because they actually last longer because their opponents are hitting them less often. So I think these guys are actually just a downgrade over the basic ones, unfortunately, which kind of sucks. Next, we have the Sibilant slaughtercade. These guys actually have quite a bit going for them. First of all, they have poison attacks. They also have Vanguard Deploy, Cause Fear, and they have this ability, Soul Hunters. So as they get kills, they get Ward Save, Leadership, and Charge Bonus, which is pretty big for Chariots. These guys have a lot going for them. They cost about 150 more than the, than the basic Chariot. And I think they're just always worth it, personally. They're a really nice unit to bring out in the late game against, like, a Cathay faction or a Dwarves. Well, you're probably not early against Dwarves, but just bring them in to help clean up a bunch of infantry. They have that fear, plus they can just get around a rear charge, so they can just route things off, clean them up, rack up those kills, stack that passive. I think these guys are, if you'd bring a Chariot, you'd probably bring these guys. The Vanguard Deploy is also very nice, like I said in the late game. You can get them out fast, get them where they need to be, and just start cleaning things up. So, I think if you want a Chariot, you probably go for the Sibilant slaughtercade. For 150 extra gold, it is well worth it. Next, we have the Eternal Entourage, the ROR Heartseekers of Slannesh. So, these guys have Perfect Vigor, as well as Obsessive Adoration. Another ability that affects only lords and heroes, this time giving them 20% more base weapon damage, AP damage, and 14 melee attack. On paper, this ability is really nice. The problem is there's not a lord that really pairs with them right now. Sigvald is far too slow to run with them. Azazel's running around in the sky. You bring a Sorcerer Lord, he's stuck on a War Shrine, very, very slow. And Nakari tends to want to dive deep into enemy blobs and just dig out characters, you know, squishy characters like Necromancers or any casters like that, where these guys can't really follow. On top of that, Nakari tends to already win most fights that he takes, so he doesn't really need this buff. So this buff would be really nice if you had that mounted beater character. You had like an Archaon kind of character that can just ride with them and beat the snot out of whatever you're fighting. As is, there's not really a character that synergizes with them very well, so that ability kind of is underused. And for the price, even with the rank 9 stats, they're just so squishy. It's another unit that's really, really risky to bring because they just cost so much and they're so squishy. It's very, very easy to lose them and not let them pay for themselves. And it's kind of a risk you don't need to take since you have Seekers for a much more reasonable price that fill largely the same role. So, unfortunately, these guys kind of suck at the moment. I'd really love to see a character that does standardize with them more. Maybe like a herald, like a a legendary herald kind of character that can actually be on a mountain and follow them around. That'd be kind of cool. And finally, we got the new one. We have the Marquee of Masochism. So, in addition to having a different spell selection, they also have the ability Feasting on Fear. They get healing based on wavering units nearby, just like, I believe, the Exalted Keeper of Secrets. The spell selection they get is Enfeebling Foe and Phantasmagoria, both spells that are available to your regular casters. They aren't that unusual. This guy, to be honest, both these guys suck. They fill a role that's already better filled on your roster. If you want a big demon to go kill things, well, you have Nakari or an Exalted Keeper that are just better at that job. In a mobile terror source, you have Azazel. And honestly, the reasons you wouldn't bring Nakari or Exalted Keeper is because they're too squishy. And if you still need that role filled, well, you bring a Soul Grinder, which is armored, and honestly a better duelist than these guys, in my opinion. It has way more weapon strength. Like I said, it's armored, it has a massive bonus versus large. So if you need more dueling power, say you want to bring, you bring Nakari and he's not enough, you're fighting, the Shredder of Lustria, or a Kugath, or a Scarbrand. You need something more punching power than Nakari can bring. You're better off with a Soul Grinder than these guys, even for their price, especially for the price. Now that Soul Grinders only cost, what, $17.50? This guy costs $500 more than that? And I honestly think he fulfills that role worse. The bound spells are okay, but they're spells that you could get anyway. And you only get one cast, so yeah, I feel like these guys just fill a role that is just already well filled on the Slannesh roster, unfortunately. So, hopefully they get changed in the future, or they get something to make them stand out. Anyway, that is all the RORs for Slannesh at the moment. Thank you so much for watching. If you found it helpful, please drop a like. If you have another faction you want to see next, let me know in the comments. And if you want to see more of this content, please subscribe. We have more of this content coming out in the next coming weeks. If you want to see that, make sure to stick around. Thank you so much. See you next time.